being able to cultivate this culture of kids who want to do things and it ends up being green is what makes us really appreciate the environment that we have. Thinking about making curriculum more student-centered and then realize that that was contributing to the problem. Get rid of that oak desk, take your tables, put them in a circle or in a long rectangle and sit with all learners. Call yourself a learners. Get rid of teacher and student.
Benjamin Freud is the head of upper school at Green School Bali, an innovative education leader who drives regenerative practices and nature-inspired solutions for learning. Benjamin is also the co-founder of Coconut Thinking, helping schools worldwide co-create, co-develop, and co-implement ideas that nurture the conditions for emergent learning.
We co-write our stories with animals, with the trees. We co-write our story with the weather. We co-write our story with digital technology. To get kids who are happy and learning is so incredibly complex and difficult. But that's what we're trying to do.
Benjamin, how did you land on this location in Bali and in this position?
If we take life backwards, in reverse, this is my second year here. I look after the learning program, well, pretty much everything that has to do with running an upper school. So that's high school, middle school, grade 6 to grade 12. And I got here because I realized a few years ago that this whole ecological breakdown thing, this whole biodiversity extinction situation was probably serious, something that we needed to pay attention to. And my little patch of grass, or at least my entry point, is education, specifically working with young people. And the story that goes and takes us here, the origin of even that decision to be in school or to have it be about education is as a single child and who like moved around a lot with his mom who worked at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I never really interacted with children very much, but as soon as I had my own kids, I realized that children give me more energy than most adults. And I love school. I mean, I will go back to get another PhD when I retire, something like that. I just really love that environment. And so it all comes together that, that's going to be my contribution through education and other people contribute in different ways. And we're hopefully all working collectively. And that's how I got to Green School Bali.
Do you think that was pure luck, a coincidence, or was it your personal goal and work on this?
Okay, now you're unraveling a very deep historical question in terms of the way we look at history. Now, I'm a historian, so it really goes there. I don't think it was luck, but it was luck. I mean, it's all about circumstances. You have to be right time, right place, right people. However, education is my second career. I started off in Silicon Valley in the late 90s, working in well, the technology sector in consulting. And so I was really imprinted there with the experiences of having people who were changing the world. They were building Web 1.0. And that really, like I said, it marked me. Throughout even my graduate school studies and so forth, I wrote my master's dissertation on Che Guevara. There's always been a rebellious side to me. And after working in consulting, that added a layer of understanding what it's like to work. Well, maybe not understanding, but at least glimpses of what life is like in different sectors, technology, pharmaceuticals, consumer goods, et cetera, across 3 regions, because I worked in London and in Japan as well. So that gives me kind of experience set to really position education within that. So it's a different set of experiences than quote unquote having only worked in education. It's just different. I'm not saying it's better, it's just different. But then a lot of it's hard work, I have to say. I work really hard, and I'm not saying this to be a martyr by any stretch. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I do work really hard. I wake up every morning around 4:30 so I could spend an hour and a half or 2 hours reading. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I talk to my wonderful wife, Charlotte, every day about stuff, and she's a great stimulation. So I work really hard for it. Again, not playing the martyr, but it is because work is my hobby and my hobby is my work. And I'm very fortunate to do that. So for me, it's not even work. It's just really something I'm excited about. as well, with coconut thinking, which is something that Charlotte and I have built together. We've been writing a lot. We've been connecting with people. I spend a lot of time on calls. None of the things that I do comes straight out of me. We're all connected, and these are just the ideas that have emerged from my conversations with others. The podcast has been wonderful as well. So I've put in some things there, but of course, circumstances lead you to where you are.
Benjamin, growing up, did you have this dream? Did you have this feeling that you will end up working in nature and in school at the same time?
Zero, no, never, not once. Simple as that, not once. I've always wanted to be in politics or do something political or travel around helping Guatemalan farmers or something like that. That
Yeah.
very savior instinct, which I got rid of, I think. But never that. No, that just came
Yeah.
through circumstance, good luck, and discovery.
Mhm. Do you think you have moved away from that initial thought, or they're merging with what you're doing right now?
It's a good question. I think that now it's about doing what we can where we are. That whole idea of cosmolocality. We do things locally, but are connected to greater networks of people. Other people will be doing other things, and hopefully we're doing the same work with alliances. I will probably not go to Guatemala and work in development there at this point in my life. However, that doesn't mean that I wouldn't be super excited about working with folks who are and seeing how, again, we can create alliances that way.
Yeah. Or contribute to Guatemala in
Totally.
another way, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And what is coconut thinking?
So coconut thinking is an advisory, a labor of love, and a place where we write and podcast on stuff that Charlotte and I want to do and talk about and write about. Um, we started off thinking about making curriculum more student-centered, and then realized that that was contributing to the problem because student-centered learning, education, whatever, puts the student at the center, which creates, we believe, a sense of isolation, individualization, this whole idea of personalized learning that thank God we're not talking about as much anymore. In at least I'm not encountering it as much. Is it atomizes us, it separates us, it creates narcissistic understandings, and we believe that learning should contribute to a thriving planet. That's what we do. So there's no point in learning something if it's not put to use. You could have a bunch of, you could have learned stuff. That's the potential energy, but that has to be transformed into kinetic energy by doing things. We put our learning to hopefully what is good use. Now, somebody's going to say, well, what do you mean by good? Fair enough. To me, good is contributing to a thriving planet, appreciating that everything we do has externalities that may be positive or negative if we simplify it. And so Coconut Think is a place where we write, we have a podcast, we talk to really cool people. And it's a way of us kind of provoking the world and just saying stuff that might push us, but also helps us start to think a bit. But we do help schools and companies think about how to tell stories in different ways, stories of learning in different ways for a thrivable planet. And what that means is that it comes out of this idea that the our civilization, our culture changes when our stories change, when the narratives change, when the protagonist, the antagonist, the conflicts, all this thing changes. And most importantly, and I'll end this long answer here, we don't write our story, we co-write our story. We co-write our story with others, and others includes the more than human world. We co-write our stories with animals, with the trees. We co-write our story with the weather. We co-write our story with digital technology. And it's rethinking that, which makes the learning process a much more a collective experience, a much more entangled experience, rather than keeping it individualized where the learning happens, just for one person, because that's not how we don't see the world that way.
Yeah. And whether we are aware of it or not, This is what happens. The more aware we are of it, the better our life is going to be, right? And what informs your thinking?
Oh, I don't know. It's a good question. I'm a very curious person, so it'd be hard to nail it on one thing. I read a lot. I read a lot of different things. Uh, I, I I'm lucky in a sense because I'm fairly introverted, although I'm talking a lot right now, clearly, but I'm generally pretty introverted. So whenever I talk to people, I listen a lot and I absorb a lot. Um, and so that has also been beneficial for me because if I shut up, I have I could listen with my 2 ears.
Mm,
And I'm always talking to Charlotte, my wife. I'm always talking to her and always changing trajectories.
mm,
And I'm also appreciating, and this is really one of the learnings that I've had recently. I I'm appreciating the fact that we can have contradictory positions on the
mm,
same thing, and that having those contradictory positions is a really, really good thing because it allows us to not just see things through different ways, but appreciate that our starting points might be different and that there's no one truth. And so that keeps me curious of never really being happy with knowing anything because I don't know anything. I just
mm,
hold co-created knowledge for a moment and then I have to let it go and co-create some more knowledge.
mhm, mhm. And what or who challenges your thinking mostly?
Oh, that's a good question too. Um, that's a really good question. What challenges my thinking mostly? I think I'll tell you what it is. I'll tell you what it is. I love being in the world of the ivory tower and all the philosophers and all these high flyers. And I'm not saying I could keep up, but I love reading that stuff. And, if I
Mm,
understand it, great. And if I don't, then suck it up. And I love that. I love that intellectualization. But what challenges me is bringing that down to earth, bringing that down to the granular, the everyday, bringing that down to the fact that in my job, sometimes I talk about big ideas, talk about this and that, but sometimes I got to find a table and I got to carry a table or find some pencils. Where is the butcher's paper, please? Oh, so what challenged my thinking is being in this continuum of high flying strategic blah 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 ideas that some people have that I love to be um, to participate in, even though I'm not always contributing. I'm learning from others, but also being down on the ground and appreciating that they might not be implementable on the ground and trying to be that bridge between the two, that crossing. That challenges me because I'm always rethinking things. It's nice to have big ideas of we are nature. And without saying, but the reality is that's not most people's understanding that we are nature. On the ground, it's something different. At the same time, what exists on the ground, we have to start appreciating that we are nature. So how do we work those two to simplify things, those two extremes of the theoretical and the practical? Where's the praxis, I guess, is the big question.
mm,
That
mm,
challenges my thinking.
mhm. And could this awareness and understanding be the reason, the non-awareness, I suppose, for some leaders that in any field, that they're not changing their thinking, like they don't challenge their thinking in any way, so they keep doing the same thing that they were doing last year and the year before?
So generalizing from my experience, and of course it's not the case with everyone,
Yeah.
I think that the first problem, the first challenge might be an ontological challenge. That is, it might be the idea of where knowledge comes from, what knowledge is. Is
Mm,
knowledge a thing? This Platonic idea that ideas are out there, what Paulo Freire calls the banking system. I think that's very prevalent in a lot of leadership models, a lot of this thing of the teacher imparts knowledge onto students. I saw someone once say something like, we are pushing back the frontiers of ignorance. I mean, it made my head spin. So I think that when we exist in a world where we're filling kids with knowledge, it's really hard to change because that's the reality that we're in. And of course, we give merit to high stakes exit point exams like the IB or A levels. And so that's really important. We find value in that. One author said that meritocracy is the last acceptable form of social discrimination. We think more of people when they're wearing a Harvard sweatshirt than we do if they're wearing a, something else sweatshirt or not wearing a sweatshirt at all.
Mhm.
I also think that so I think there's this issue. I think that there's also the issue that educators oftentimes only talk to other educators. And a little soundbite would be education's not going to solve itself through education. We need to go out, branch out, and talk to other areas. And I'm not talking about like Google HR, what does, the world of work need? I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about how things might be in other places. What might it look like to think about education through the lens of biology? Or even if we don't want to make it in terms of disciplines, what might education be in terms of living systems? The natural world. How might that look like? What might education look like through the lens of cultural studies? I don't know, whatever. I mean, again, I'm siloing it here, which is not really what I mean, but just the different ways, different conversations. And lastly, the reality is it's time. Time. I mean, I suffer from insomnia, so that's why I could, get up and I read. But where do you find time to balance your family life, your work life, your I need to be sane and do my things life, because that asks for commitment too. And we live in such a society where we're looking for magic bullets, where we are put under the cosh of accountability, of having to get test results, of all of this thing that the system reinforces this desire not to change because ultimately I just live for my yearly test results or whatever, my score, my exam scores. That will force us to stay in the system, and the system punishes you for trying to do something different. So it's tremendously complex, which is the obvious statement of the day.
Mhm, mhm. And in a more practical way, like you are head of the high school in Green School, and how is this school different to other schools, if you know the differences? And how
Mhm.
do the students feel the difference? And the parents, maybe.
So I can talk about so I had a high school and middle school, and that's an important thing because the programs are different. So I've got two entry points here to be able to explain. So the first thing to say is that green school is not for everyone. Calling it out. One of the challenges that I would like to uh, propose to schools or put down for schools is pick a lane. If you go on any international school's website and you read their mission and vision, you could take that mission and vision, give it over to some other international schools, and nobody's going to tell the difference. It's all the same thing. Prepare, I bet you just go and random one, prepare kids for a future and creativity and resilience. Like it's just these buzzwords that don't mean much. And really we're still talking about the same exit point exams in many schools. I'm exaggerating to make my point, but not by much. So green school is different because it's not for everyone. Uh, Someone asked me the other day, we're here at Green School, but we're thinking about going to our home country. How easy will it be to go back in a traditional system? And I said, it won't be easy. And it's not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be really hard because if it was easy to go back into a traditional system, we wouldn't be doing our job.
Yeah.
Because Green School is a place where we try to flatten hierarchies, where we try to make it so that every learner, no matter what their age is, can propose a learning experience, a project, an idea, something, and we will generally come off saying yes. We'll probably put some guardrails around it to make sure it's successful. It's not just that the school is like super green and sustainable operationally in terms of its buildings, its water consumptions, blah, blah. It's also the fact that the kids can suggest anything and we'll say, yeah, sure, let's try that. We don't
Mm.
have exams, of course, but we also have a system where the kids can suggest classes in high school for what they want to take. If they want to take, somebody wanted to take something on existentialist literature, we created a class for that. It's a place where the kids can say, I want to work on this project. Can I find time to do it during the day? We make that happen. It's a place where everything has to have a component of contribution to the world. And I don't know if many schools can say that their learning consistently is designed to contribute to the world as the world, however small or local. It doesn't have to be the globe. It could be your little patch of grass, but something like that. And it's a place where we just think about learning in different ways, think about learning in ways that make sense to students, and we'll adapt very quickly. And it's just a place that's alive. When I came here and I interviewed, I called Charlotte and I said, this place is alive. It feels it. It's hot, it's noisy, it's dirty, like, literally dirt-y. It's so incredibly sensuous. Like all your senses are alive. And that will tire you, but every morning you're just pumped to go to work because of the sensory experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that keeps you going, right?
I absolutely cannot, without any shadow of doubt, say that. I mean, I'm so incredibly rejuvenated by the possibilities of being in a place where the educators and the leadership is all about let's just work at the edges and push those edges out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And do you feel that you attract these kind of parents who are in the same mindset, or you attract people who are, you have to bring them to your this mindset, teach them, train them, immerse them?
In theory, we should only have parents that have this mindset. That's when it comes to the message there. I think green school sometimes is a dream. Bali's a dream. Last year, we had 89% of our new families who moved to green school, sorry, moved to Bali for green school. 89%. So it's not like parents were on an international circuit where, mommy or daddy get a job somewhere and they move to the international school of whatever. I think 70% come from state schools.
Mm.
So again, they're not used to maybe the private schools. So it's a particular socioeconomic demographic that can do that with everything that represents. But I think a lot of folks want an alternative. And so the question that I ask every applicant is, what great things, not why do you want to be at green school, but what great things can you do at green school? And I think that sometimes people think that it's what they want, but then they realize they're not getting the traditional academics that they might in other schools, and it makes them feel nervous, which is understandable because the dominant narrative is that you have to have academics or you will fall behind, blah, blah. Um, but I think that we're doing a good job of communicating those differences and being bold, just being bold about it. Like I said, I told that parent that they shouldn't be able to go back to traditional schools, and we have to own that. We can't be everything to everyone. No one's ever eaten well, I don't think, at an all-you-can-eat buffet. And so we have to operate with what we're good at, and it will be great for some and not great for others, and that's cool. I'm okay with that.
And can you share one case study of a student who is thriving right now?
Mhm.
Like this student is an adult and is thriving right now because of this dreamy situation in their early years. It's dreamy for me.
So we have one student. I'll give you two examples because the first example that I'm using, I've already said before publicly. We have one student who we have a program where on one day kids go out and they go do coral restoration. So they dive and they restore corals.
Okay.
Now, corals, to restore them, you put them on this kind of hexagonal structure and you attach the coral so that they grow. And you attach them with zip ties. And he said, well, that's fantastic that we're doing this, but the zip ties are made of plastic. So we're putting plastic in the ocean.
Mm.
So on his own, he went to our makerspace, called that iHub, whatever, and he experimented and he developed biodegradable zip ties that last just long enough for the corals to take hold.
Wow.
He did that on his own. He did that on his own, testing it out. So it's not just that he's just an awesome kid. He is an awesome kid, but it's also the fact that we gave him space to do that. And it's totally worth it because that was where the learning was going to happen more so than doing a class. I'm not saying he wouldn't have learned in another class, but that's where his learning was. Right now, he's building out of I think it's a 3D model, at least the prototypes are. I don't know what the final piece is going to be, but hydroelectric generator that fits in Well, it's actually portable, and so he's made different prototypes. But he just goes and he builds his thing, and it's hydroelectric. He wanted to do wind turbine based on biomimetic principles, but he's given that up, and then so he's thriving, and he's just doing his thing. I'll give you another example of maybe a younger a younger kid. She has dyslexia, and the traditional curriculum is difficult to access. And frankly, she will probably never succeed in a traditional school. And that's what it is. And I'm not saying that this is, but what she's doing is she's developed her own fashion line of upcycled materials. Now she's in grade 8, so she's 13. She's done a whole series with sketches and fashion, and she does it, and then that's going to be like her year long or career long, I don't know what, project of working with this. Now, it's not super duper ultra unique. Like other people have done this in the world. It's not saying you can only do that at Green School. But it's the fact again that we give her space, that we recognize it, that we showcase that this is really what we want to encourage, these projects that are more than personal projects. I don't like personal projects. These are projects, these are adventures that contribute to the world. She's designing this line of upcycle materials and all the learning that goes on with building a business, um, a certain amount of I mean, it's not manufacturing, but it kind of is. There's the whole the business side, finance side of it. So she's thriving and she's happy as anything. So being able to cultivate this culture of kids who want to do things and it ends up being green, and I use that term, with massive air quotes, it is what makes us really appreciate the environment that we have. Um, I'm not going to use this cliche of we're trying to, develop change makers. That's not what I mean. I just want kids who are happy and learning. And to get kids who are happy and learning is so incredibly complex and difficult. But that's what we're trying to do.
And I'm picking two things here. One thing is that the student goes into an adventure, as you mentioned. The project is an adventure, and this could last for 1 year or even more.
Mhm.
Like the
Yeah.
students their own adventure and they learn through this. And the other thing I picked is that you're not only allow them to be in their creators mode, which is everybody stays and lingers there, may forget themselves in the creators mode and not be able to implement anything else, but you also teach them how to apply this in real life and then proceed with that, right?
So you did pick up on adventures. I could also use the word journey or whatever other thing, but I really want to use the words of storytelling. That's really important to me. These are stories. Now, when you pick up a book and, I mean, a quality book I mean, I know there's certain tropes and stuff, but you pick up a book, you should never really know how the story ends. I mean, you know that it's going to end well, chances are, but you know what I mean? Like there should be surprises, there should be challenges. I mean, typical story arc. And that's what the learning experience should be. It shouldn't be this linear from point A to point B in a straight line. It shouldn't be that you already know on the first day what's going to happen the last day. Learning should be an adventure. It should be about discovery, conflict, resolution, friendships, all of these things. So I do use those words intentionally. And the other thing is, so often I've seen that this creativity, like you mentioned, just sits on the Google Drive. It sits on a
Mhm.
slideshow that nobody cares about because let's face it, nobody wants to sit through this. It's not enough to have it sit on a slideshow. It needs to, again, go from potential energy to kinetic energy. It needs to be realized in all of the senses of the word. And why not? Why not? Oftentimes the reason is, all because we have too much curriculum to go through. We don't have time. Well, I say that's violent. That's violence against learning. That's violent against the child. That's violent against the adult. Why do we have to batam death march these kids through this curriculum that's probably pointless by the time they graduate anyway, in order to and not let them explore these areas? Now, I want to make a point here. There's a certain amount of wildness there, but it's not the Wild West. Like it's wildness in the sense. So I'm looking out my window here. I'm on campus and I'm looking at this bamboo and these trees, and there's something wild there. Like these trees will grow the way they grow, but they will still be trees. They're not going to morph into some kind of elephant or a cactus, but they are allowed to find their way and grow based on the conditions that are around them. They don't grow in isolation. And so when these kids are working on these projects, there are those guardrails that I mentioned earlier. There's guardrails there, but we let a lot of room for emergence as to what that looks like. There's still learning intentions. There's still things that we map in terms of outcomes and reports and I can statements and all that good stuff. But we don't always know where this adventure will end. And it has to be realized they have to come out with something tangible
Mhm.
rather than just having it sit on a Google slide and then move on to your next unit. And what did I do? I don't remember.
Exactly, exactly. And there might be some leaders listening to us, to this podcast right now, and they might have hit a roadblock or a dead end, and like they acknowledge that something is wrong with what they're doing and they need something else. Can you share a formula or a tip that can divert them into a new direction and maybe something bright and new?
I can't give a formula because everything is situated and contextual. However, the tips, maybe some ideas, maybe some things. And what's wonderful is that if you had asked me a week ago, or if you asked me a week from now, I might give you something different. So this is where we come at the luck of the draw. This might resonate. Maybe if we had talked about it a week later, something else would have resonated with somebody else. I'm really interested in this idea of having flattened hierarchies.
Mm.
And I think this is a political move, a resistance move. It is a move against the dominant or master narrative. It is a move against the power relations that exist in schools. And leaders would be courageous to do this. Teachers would be even more courageous, but I think it's doable. You don't have to throw everything out, but we can start this. Have kids call you by their first name, by your first name, and you call them by your first name. Get rid of that oak desk. Take your tables, put them in a circle or in a long rectangle and sit with all learners. Call yourself a learners. Get rid of teacher and student. Have students make and create policy for the school. Have them be on the board. Have nature be on the board. I mean, that's a bit far, but at least the students be there, student representation. Don't just give them a seat at the table. Malcolm X said just because you're at the table doesn't make you a diner. You got to actually eat. So make sure that they eat. And start thinking about the way relationships can be reconfigured so that power emerges differently. Take down the sign on your door that says such and such principal. In fact, don't even have an office. Hot desk. Um, Ask kids, like, talk about stuff that doesn't necessarily matter to you. And I'm not just
Yeah.
saying like, how was your weekend, but just stuff. And see what happens when those relationships change because the relationships change. And one last thing, and this is probably the most important. Be okay with being challenged. Let kids express themselves. Let them have their opinions and don't knock it down. Listen. If it doesn't work out, that's okay. They need to hear no, but just listen and treat them with the same respect you would treat a colleague, because that really is what's going to make things different. That's going to give kids a sense of um, a sense of liberty and freedom in the sense of they feel, wow, maybe I am respected, maybe I can do things, maybe I am able to propose things. And I tell you what, they're going to have come with good ideas. And that's really challenging for a lot of people, particularly if they think that they're there to impart knowledge. But I think that that's the cultural shift that happens, and then probably the curriculum shift will happen from that. That's what I would say.
Yeah. And maybe this is what kids really need right now,
Mm,
to have this empowerment that I can
mm,
do it, I can contribute to conversation, I can contribute to policy making. Yeah,
mhm.
really, really powerful. Thank you. Thank you so much for being an advocate for this and a contributor, of course. So for this last part of the podcast, we play a game. I play a game with my guests and I bring my books. Like it's I grow the list and I don't remove any books, so it grows and grows. if you can pick one of the books and we will play the game and I will explain.
Okay, I have not read any of them, but I'm gonna pick the Brene Brown book, Atlas of the Heart.
Okay. I haven't read it yet. It's a new one for me. But I have like scanned it and I know what's inside. So, okay. Give me a page number.
Let's go with the number 99.
99. Okay.
I like this game.
And a line. Ooh,
Oh, let's go
99.
with my favorite number, if we want a line for me, 11.
Hold on. This is what I got in 99. We
Oh,
can
okay.
change
Well,
some, or we can,
could we go? Let's go one page after then. Oh, wow. That's
because this is brilliant as well. It's about nature.
okay.
The page after.
Hmm.
You mean this with a few lines or that one? Which
Oh,
one?
I don't know. Let's go with let's make it the text heavy page.
Text heavy. Okay, give me a
Yeah.
line then.
So 11.
11. All right. So I'm going to read the page 11, line 11 and the context around it, and we will talk how this resonates. Okay. It's so important to know that hope is learned. According to Snyder, children must often learn the habit of hope from their parents. To learn hopefulness, children need relationships that are characterized by boundaries, consistency, and support. How does this resonate?
Wow, I had to get the hope one, didn't I? Because this is where I get myself in trouble because I don't know if hope's a good thing or not. I think okay, so as we talked about earlier, there's many different starting points. So yes, definitely the way that we envelop the experiences for kids and disenvelop it, that is, let them go. Also, we do learn hope. We do learn a certain amount of resilience, a certain amount of positivity, but also maybe that space that we were talked about earlier when you believe, you have the freedom to believe that you can do things, that nurtures hope.
Mhm.
We want it to be the right hope, not idealistic, saccharine hope of it will all get better. We certainly want to have critical thinking involved here, where it's not the hope of some techno utopia solutions thing that gives us hope that somebody's going to come down and save the world from burning. We don't want that hope. We want realistic hope, and one
Mhm.
where we could probably localize that hope to do things that we can take care of. So that makes a lot of sense to me. And we can learn from each other as well. So it's not just us enveloping the young people, but they also have to envelop us. We're doing this together. They gave us hope and they teach us things too. And I don't mean this in a trite way of, oh, we can learn from the children. It goes much deeper than that. The other side of me wonders if hope is actually not a dangerous thing, because it gets us to always look towards the future, towards this idea of a white knight, to this idea that it's going to be okay, because there is a real possibility that it's not going to be okay. There's a real possibility that we're on the verge of civilizational collapse. There's a real possibility that the world as we know it will end shortly. Kids who are born today, let's just say today's what, December 2024, there's a pretty good chance they'll live, I believe, till 2150, given the advances in health and biotech. 2150, and we can't even consider 2030. So you know someone, I know someone, or will soon know someone who will definitely be in the 22nd century. And we can't even imagine that. So, do I have hope for that world? I don't know. So I'm not trying to put a downer on things. I'm not because we need to move beyond hope, but we also need to move beyond despair. We need to just kind of sit there and as Donna Haraway would say, stay with the trouble and just appreciate it. This is where we are, and it's heavy. And again, I don't want to be a downer, but we could also say it with a little bit of levity. And I think it was Joanna Macy. I don't know who said it. It doesn't matter. But someone he said, we might all be screwed, but let's go out in style. So we take a little bit of humor, goodwill with it all. So uh, again, like there's so many ways we can dance with this, but I love that line. I'm really lucky and fortunate to have that. I love this game. It's fantastic.
Totally relates to what you're doing. I think you're nurturing hope, but you're giving a structure for this
Mhm.
nurturing. Just let's be hopeful, let's be wild,
Yeah.
let's be in nature, let's have fun, let's have an adventure. It's structured and it builds hope in the right sense.
Mm.
And it's hopeful for me as well. Like I know that there are some people working deeply on building a better future. And thank you so much for this
Thank you
conversation.
so much.
Really appreciate it. It's been wonderful
Awesome.
learning more from you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.